Hi, and welcome to Tech Talks, the People and Planet podcast. Today, I'm joined by co-founder at wellness startup Tonus Tech, Ahmed Wobi. Hi, Ahmed, how are you?
Hi Lee, how's it going?
Okay, thank you. How's your week been?
Yeah, good, thanks. Busy, but good busy.
Nice. Okay. So, Ahmed, please could you give our listeners a high-level overview of the problem that Tonus is tackling with the mission and the inspiration, I think, behind that as well?
Sure. So Tonus Tech, we want to keep people moving better for longer. And we sort of came to this vision essentially as a result of the way that we were formed. So we came out of a mission-driven business builder called Zinc VC, where the aim was essentially improving health span, particularly 5 years of later life. And we all had individual ideas with my co-founders, my background being medical, my co-founders having a technical and a business background. And we thought that wearables would be really useful in the space of mobility and physical longevity. So that was sort of the origin. And when we looked at like the numbers and statistics and the growing population of people who are getting older, but not moving better, we thought this is something that we can really make a difference with.
Oh, nice. Okay. So yeah, I mean, look, the notion of movement is not a new one, isn't it? I mean, everyone knows about step counts and the figure of 10,000 is banded around and things like that. But that's really it, and it's all a little bit, finger in the air type thing. So could you give us a bit of an idea of how your product works, and perhaps in particular, how the artificial intelligence side of it works as well, and how that might differ from something that perhaps we all know about already from our mobiles?
Absolutely. So at Tonus, we have sort of a dual system. We have sensors and we have the software and the artificial intelligence. So the way I'd say that we're different from a typical phone or a wearable, like a single watch, like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, is that we have a multiple sensor distributed system. So what happens is we have multiple sensors that are on the limbs, particularly the lower limbs, so on each leg and on the lower back. And this gives us the ability to capture kinematics or biomechanics in a way that other sensors are not able to. So this is why we think that being able to capture mobility and movement in this kind of accurate way, particularly of the limbs and the muscles and the joints, gives us a specific advantage to look at mobility in a different way. And I think when you mentioned steps earlier on, steps are a good thing. Mobility is good in general, any form, steps, walking around, movement. We all know that there's lots of evidence that improves our health and our well-being, but we need to look at that from a different way to improve the quality of that, rather than just having sort of like an arbitrary, like get your steps in. How can we improve it so that when you're moving, you're not just getting your cardiovascular workout by getting your steps in, but you're improving the strength of your muscles, you're improving the quality of your bones, you're improving the integrity of your joints. How can we do that in a whole complete package, but at the same time give it to everyone in an individual package? Because not everybody is the same. We all have different bodies and different anatomy. So for us, that's how we work, using the sensors and the artificial intelligence. And what the artificial intelligence does is that it sort of takes the information and kind of collates it together.
Okay. And then what? Personalize it, recommends things that like a personalized rehab plan, and that's an assumption.
Basically, up what the individual is doing, and the machine learning sort of works out, okay, it classifies the specific movement, so whether it's a walking or a squat or a lunge, and it can work out, okay, this is what the person is doing, and then it provides a qualitative score. So we call that the motion score, and this is developed using strength and conditioning and coaches and fitness experts by looking at lots and lots and lots of repetitions from multiple individuals and working out what is the best way to move, essentially. And this score is sort of like trained on lots of users in the past, but also gives the current user an idea of how well they're moving. And that's the feedback that we often are lacking. So when you have your steps, you're just going out, but you don't know how good those steps are. So what if we could give you that feedback to be like, okay, actually, you have an imbalance, you have a symmetry, your knee isn't moving as right on your left compared to your right hand side, and so on and so forth. So giving that quality. And then that leads to the kind of the next stage, the feedback stage, where it's like, okay, this is how you can improve your specific deficiency.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, you can see you can picture this with a lot of different applications, couldn't you, in different contexts. Um,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So what is it's a wearable, right? So it's I don't know, what like a stocking or something, or
So we have sort of three different use cases. So you can have it directly on the skin. So the small sensors can attach directly to the skin. You can have them in like sleeves. So you
yeah.
can put them inside little sleeves that go up over the limbs, or like a band that goes around the limb, or they can go in pockets inside of leggings. So we have leggings that have little pockets that are customized where you can just slip in the little wireless sensors.
Yeah, fantastic. What about yourself then? What's your own background? What's your story? And what's your role at Tonus?
Sure. So my background is I used to be a doctor. I did neurosciences at Oxford University. Then I did my clinical background at Imperial College. I worked as a doctor in the NHS for about 7 years. And then I went into the sort of startup field, working in sort of telemedicine. I started my own diabetes startup. And before joining and meeting my co-founders at Tonus Tech, I also sort of have like a little bit of a fitness background in that I used to play a lot of sport, basketball particularly. I was a national champion in basketball in 2004, and
Nice.
I've also had joint problems as well. I had problems with my knees, and I've had surgery in both of them. So I think I understand sort of the issue that we're trying to challenge in terms of from being a medic and seeing patients that have problems with their movements and their mobility, but also being someone that's had joint issues, that's had surgery and had to go through rehabilitation, and that process isn't always streamlined or easy. And so trying to come at it from that perspective has definitely given me like a varied insight, and I think that's helped us a lot on our journey so far.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, I touched on it before when I said you can see how this would work in different contexts. And I think, you know, high level stroke elite sport would be certainly one of those.
Absolutely.
You mentioned basketball there, but literally anything that where there's a movement that could be recorded, then you know,
Yeah.
I was thinking of a golf swing, you know, for example, or anything like that.
You're
Um,
absolutely right. And some of the work we did initially with Newcastle University in our initial testing was with athletes from rugby. So we had athletes kind of trying out the technology and testing it as well. And some of the partnerships that we're sort of investigating currently involve people who are high level as well, professional athletes. So you're absolutely right. Anyone that moves, whether you are kind of the professional or if you're just an amateur that's interested in your body and keeping fit, this is all for you.
Fantastic. So Tonus was founded in 2020. I'm assuming, like most startups, that it's not been a smooth process. There's always some bumps in the road. What challenges have you had to overcome to get to this point?
Yeah, you would be right. I think it would be very unusual if a startup just launched and
Yeah.
everything was perfect and they were successful and helped millions of people. For us, I think it's our pivot. So initially, we kind of came out of the gate wanting to be a sort of like an exosuit or exoskeleton company. We wanted to give the powered support. So we know that people had difficulty moving, but what if we could give them a little bit of like of an extra push in the same way that an electric bike can help someone get that extra support when
Yeah.
they're cycling? We were thinking, let's make the electric hike the version where you put it on, and when you go for your run or your hike or your physical activity, if you're feeling tired or you need a bit of support, you can push. Then you realize, coming from like a sort of a small startup, from a business builder, it's not necessarily the easiest to develop that kind of high concept exoskeleton technology involving new things that haven't been made in the market. So that's something that we're definitely still interested in, but I think that's a little bit further down the line. So being able to kind of do the R&D and initial tests with artificial muscles and seeing some promising results, but then working out actually this is maybe not commercially viable straight away. Let's
Yeah.
focus on the sensing aspect, because the sensing aspect will give you a great amount of information. The artificial intelligence can really help people from a fitness and training perspective. But also you need that later on when you're developing the exoskeleton. So when your exoskeleton needs to know when to power, you need to have the understanding of the skeleton and the movement and the timing. So all of that stuff is still useful and valuable for us. So that was kind of one of the biggest challenges, the pivot from let's go from exoskeletons to focusing on the sensing. Yeah, and I think initially we were a bit more B2C, so we wanted to go straight to customers and give them
Really?
an easy off-the-shelf solution. And then we
Yeah.
realized again that it might be better to start going B2B. So our pivot again has been more working with other organizations, physiotherapists, health centers, fitness centers, rehabilitation, sports teams, companies like that. That's, I think, where we can give the most value at this stage. And again, in the future, hopefully we can find a version that we can give straight to customers.
Yeah, fantastic. So how would that work then? So you would sell, let's say that you sold it to a sports team. They would pay you a license as a SaaS product. Is that right?
Exactly. It's like a ongoing like subscription fee, and depending on their custom needs, we can sort of vary our service, whether it's like they want a certain number of kit, or they want certain support, or they want a specific version of the software. So that if it's, for example, a football team, they might want to look at specific movements around football, around kicking, around twisting, about moving, around goalkeepers, compared to someone who is looking at cycling, for example. So we can build in those custom aspects of the product for them.
Yeah, sounds nice. So where are you guys in the journey at the moment then? Are you looking to raise? Are you very much a research business at the moment, or are you commercial? Whereabouts are you up to?
So we're in the middle of, well, I technically just started a raise. So we're looking at a sort of like a pre-seed round, and been very encouraging discussions so far with investors. So that's been very fortunate. And we're also looking at further commercial partnerships. So we've worked with gyms before, particularly one in Denmark, Strong for Life. So we're looking to extend our commercial partnerships with specific organizations that I mentioned: the physiotherapists, the rehabilitation, fitness and health, sports teams, and older adults in residential care homes. So that's the kind of the stage that we're at now.
Okay. So sounds good. So yeah, I mean, you've touched on a little bit of this last question there, but where can you see this going in the future? It's a big space. You're only 3 years into this. Where can you see this going in the future?
I think that the more that the technology becomes accessible and the more it becomes affordable, the easier it will be that we will have the sensors fully integrated into regular clothing. So in your regular sports shirts, your sports clothing, your sports leggings, it will just be all in one, and it will go to the point where it will go beyond sports, and it will just be your regular clothes, and we'll be able to capture lots of information that's useful when people are just walking around, going by their day by day. And I think that information will be used as a biomarker for predictions for health. So whether it's looking at future joint health, musculoskeletal health, muscle health, osteoporosis, or other conditions like Parkinson's or dementia, anything like that, we'll be able to pick up in the same way now that some smartwatches can pick up things around heart health, and they can tell you if you have an arrhythmia or something's not quite right. I think that's what kinematic sensors on the body and the limbs will be able to pick up. So I think that's one aspect. I think exoskeletons will become more affordable and smaller. So I think there are some companies who have entered the consumer exoskeleton field, but it's a very early stage. I think it won't be a crazy idea that in the same way that you see now people with Lime bikes or Santander bikes that have a battery that you can rent. I can imagine someone just being like, yeah, I'm just going to go and pick up my exoskeleton or my powered trousers because I'm going to go for a run or going for a hike or I'm going to the gym. And I think that's not that far away. I think maybe 5 years that will be commercially widespread.
Yeah, really.
So I think like those kind of huge leaps are not quite as big as we think they are.
And when you're talking about it, it does seem like, wow, it's like something that you would see perhaps like a movie or something like that. But you're saying it's maybe 5 years away. As a right normal, now, everyday thing. I'm just going to pick up my exoskeleton.
Absolutely. Like right now, there are people who do it in specific like commercial industrial use cases. So in factories where they're helping people lift and move boxes or with the heavy machinery. I think the future of that is like, okay, let's make it smaller, let's make it easier to use, let's make it lighter. And there are a couple of companies who are experimenting that in specific fields like skiing, for example, that you can attach it to your boots and it will give you support when you're going down the hill and guidance as well.
Yeah. Wow. 5 years. So it's a big space, and looking forward to see what Tonus Tech can play in that as well. So Ahmed, that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much. It's been really insightful. Guys, this has been Ahmed Wobi from Tonus Tech. And if you've enjoyed Ahmed's content today, make sure to give us a like, a comment, a follow on Tech Talks, the People and Planet podcast. Ahmed, thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, Lee. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.